Hey folks, welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, we've got the great Dave Birkett back, which is great for me because it helps kind of check you, just in terms of reality. So that's always a pleasure, right? I don't know if it is for you so much, but I hope it is. You're friends, right? At least off the court, so to speak.
Yeah, it's good to see Dave, but I just saw him because I actually go to Lions press conferences on like another columnist I know. So, I saw him yesterday, and I'm going to see him today on video. So I'm not sure if you actually exist,
and tomorrow,
Shawn. And tomorrow, right? Or today, whatever the podcast drops.
Yeah, no, we'll see it. We'll see it tomorrow. I don't know what good it did for you to go to Allen Park because
neither do I.
You have to kind of see and pay attention to what people are actually trying to say instead of put words in their mouth. But okay, Dave. First of all, thanks for taking time to join this little production here. I don't know if you read Carlos or not today, but let me just preface this by saying I called him up a couple days ago because he wrote a Wings column, which I thought was really, really good. And I'm thinking, okay, here we go, right? And then he comes back with some stuff about a Super Bowl quarterback not understanding what it's like to play in competitive games. I wasn't sure what he was trying to say exactly, but did you happen to read, Carlos, about the Lions and about how concerned he was? I thought you were concerned when your kids cut themselves or something, but yeah, go ahead.
I do have his column up on my computer right now. In the second graph, I will say, look, first of all, Carlos, I appreciate you coming out to Lions yesterday. Shawn, if you need directions to Allen Park, I know it's been a while. I can give those to you after we're done recording.
I was there the last time folks were. Well, no, I missed the assistant coaches last week. So,
but
he was there for the last road game. That's the last time Shawn was there.
Yeah, no, I the assistant coach stuff with John Fox, who I know you're going to talk about here in a bit. Izzo was doing his season-ending wrap up. So.
Yeah, basketball, like 4 weeks after the season was over, took precedence, Dave. You have to understand that. Come on.
Yeah, but again, that's like his column. It wasn't 4 weeks. It was a week after the season was over. But go ahead.
Sorry, Dave.
Well, I was just going to say, I did the second graph did give me pause when he said something that Jared Goff and Taylor Decker said was deeply concerning because...
Oh, God, it hurts the heart.
Yeah. Because, I mean, this is player speak. What do you expect? They know that the target is on them.
You asked them, and they refused to say that the bullseye.
Yeah,
you asked them.
Jared Goff was definitely talking out of both sides of his mouth. He said, "There's no favorites here right now, but we feel like we got a team that's ready to do some things." And so, they know how good they are. They know what the expectations are about them. But I mean, look, if I'm being honest, I don't find much of anything that players say or coaches say to be deeply concerning because so much of it is sanitized.
But Carlos, for whatever reason, and maybe he can help us understand, decided that didn't matter, that reality didn't matter. So what's the thinking behind this?
Oh, I made the big mistake of actually believing, taking people at the word and actually believing what they're saying. I mean, if they're trying to, and I think this all gets down to, for the one listener out there who probably doesn't know what we're talking about, Jared Goff, Taylor Decker, Amon-Ra St. Brown talked yesterday on Tuesday, and started of the offseason program. And Goff and Decker specifically were kind of playing down the expectations, playing down they're the lead dog in the NFC North. People were asking, what's it going to be like now? How different is the vibe in the building right now or among the team with you guys having these expectations from the outside, of course, to win the division, to be a playoff team. And they're like, what are you talking about? I think Goff said, we didn't make the playoffs last year. Why will there be, why are we the guys who are being hunted? And it's like, but yet, like Dave says, talking out both sides of their mouth, they're saying, yeah, we finished, 8-2 in the season, the last 10 games, one of the hottest teams in the NFL. So, of course, people are going to be coming after them. Now, it's just human nature to tamp down expectations. You don't want to set the bar too high and fall short. So, yes, but I do believe there is part of me that is concerned that these guys are going to be pretending that, no, hey, guys, let's just go out there and let's just get better one day at a time and whatever. Let's just be the best us we can and kumbaya, No, man, you guys are the lead dogs right now. You got to accept that. You got to accept that every other team, you went 5-1 in the division and you got the Vikings got lucky to win that one game against you in Minnesota. So everybody wants to have payback against the Lions in the division. So they need to recognize that. They need to understand that people are going to be coming for them throughout the league. They're the Cinderellas. Your favorite coach of all time, Dan Campbell, Shawn, is he's a target in a way because he's so flamboyant and bigger than life. And, you bet other teams want to knock him down. That's a good thing, but they have to accept it.
Dave,
I think,
Dave, please. Yeah.
No,
please.
Well, look, first, I think there needs to be a little clarification that Jared Goff was definitely downplaying and talking out of both sides of his mouth. Taylor Decker I thought Taylor said some, important and good things. He was sort of saying like, yeah, these things are there, but we have to prove them first, which that's what it is. Like they do have to prove it, right? No one is ready to crown them yet. And the expectations don't mean anything unless they go out and sort of fulfill their obligations, right? Both here in the off season and once the season comes. So I think there was a little distinction between what those two were saying. But look, when Dan Campbell gets in front of the cameras and he's asked about these, and he's already sort of acknowledged this. I mean, talking at the owners' meetings and even a little bit at the combine, Dan's not a guy that's going to downplay that. I mean, Dan is the type that's going to embrace that and say, hell yeah, we are the team to beat. We got a pretty good team and we expect to be a good team. And, if you want to win the NFC North, it's going to have to come through Detroit. And so I think that's the personality that his team will take, no matter what Jared Goff is saying right now in mid-April.
Is he going that far? Do you think he's going to go that far? The NFC North goes through us. Is that he's going to go that far?
I don't know that he'll
close to that.
Look, I think certainly he'll respect that the Minnesota Vikings are the reigning champs. So maybe he won't say exactly that, but the air that he will give and the way that he will act behind closed doors, I feel pretty confident in saying that Dan will exude the confidence that you would think that some of these top level, teams would have, and that, maybe his team will buy in. There's, no one is going to come out and say, this is our division for the taking, right? Like, you're not trying to give your opponent's message board, or, locker room fodder, but there is a different way to handle it than how, Jared Goff was soft talking and not wanting to acknowledge that, yeah, maybe there are some raised expectations and, we could be the favorites because we've done some good things. I think Dan will present a different side of that when he's asked about that a little more in depth, be it here later this spring or come summer before training camp.
Let me. I don't want to. Just one last thing, Shawn. I'll let you talk. Sorry about that, but it's your show. So my question is, Dan Campbell's done a really good job of playing the underdog, right? We're going to bite your kneecaps and get back up. We're gonna take you out to the shallows and drown you, whatever. Like he's embraced that role. It's worked for him. Now, is he going to change that? Is he going to change the message of now we're the dogs? We're the internally, but also externally.
Well, I think what Taylor said yesterday, and that's why I do think there is this distinction between what Taylor Decker and Jared Goff said. Taylor said, the guys and him in particular sort of understand what they've gone through to get to this point, right? They remember all the muck that they dealt with over the last few years and how, people held them down. And, Amon-Ra St. Brown said it too, that, all these teams that always used to take the Lions for granted, well, they can't do that anymore. And so, I don't think you have to totally divorce yourself from that underdog sort of mentality, and especially if you're built up of guys who still view themselves as that, right? A fourth round pick in St. Brown, or a guy like Decker who's gone through 6 years of his career without ever getting any Pro Bowl recognition and playing on bad teams throughout, and remembering all those times when not just fans, but, people in the NFL thought the Lions weren't anything. So I think you can sort of have both of those worlds right now while the Lions are still in this phase of not having won anything yet, but being the type of team and having the type of roster that a lot of people will expect to win a whole lot of games this fall.
What do you think, Carlos?
It's your time to talk with. That's what I think. It's yeah, I mean,
no, because Dave laid out distinction. That's a word that you probably should familiarize yourself with.
After hagiography, I'll familiarize myself. Yeah.
What St. Brown was saying, what Decker was saying, it doesn't fit the agenda when you go in. And I remember a columnist that shall remain nameless that used to get to a game and have the column written. But anyway, so yeah,
He
distinction.
never missed deadline either, by the way. So yeah,
nuance, all that sort of thing.
No,
What,
I mean, of course,
what do you
Taylor
think
Decker
now that he laid that out for you?
Yeah, I mean, Decker and Goff had a little bit of a different spin, and they come from different trajectories, right? Decker's been here the whole time. He's seen the worst of the worst, and Goff has played in the Super Bowl, thanks to
don't do it. Don't
Sean
say it. Whatever
McVay,
it is you're going to say, don't say
Rams,
it.
Aaron Donald, and Nickel Roby Coleman. Thanks
and he
to
had
all
nothing
those
to do
guys.
with it.
Todd Gurley and Brett Holmes.
Yeah,
exactly.
Goff had nothing to do with it. He was a passenger, wasn't he?
He was a decent quarterback in that whole operation that played well enough to get them there. Yes. So you know what? I mean, will they use that underdog mentality still? Can they still apply that? And you know what? And was it Decker who said, we have a lot of work to do. We haven't proven anything yet. Yeah, I mean, of course not. And too much is often made about carryover from one season to the next because there's attrition, right? There's a lot of stuff that changes. The Lions have lost not only players, but, important position coaches. So, that's a question mark that we don't know what's going to happen. Is Dre Bly, is he going to get fired 6 games into the season because, he's screwing up or whatever? We don't know. He's an unknown, first time in the NFL as a coach. So they do have to prove themselves, but that still doesn't mean that the Lions are not going to be perceived as favorites everywhere in the division, nationally, locally, and the pressure. And there's a pressure from a certain columnist who shall remain nameless, who keeps talking about hope and how much hope this is going to give everybody. And everybody's lives depend on the Lions, fortunes this year. And, there's so little to be happy about with the sports teams here in Detroit that the Lions are carrying everybody's hopes. So you're going to see, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens if they win right away or they stumble right away. There's going to be a lot of reaction. If they win right away, a certain columnist who's going to remain nameless is going to crown them Super Bowl champs probably in the second or third week when they go 2-0, 3-0. If they go 0-3 or 1-2 or something, then that's going to set Detroit in a panic. And that'll be also interesting to see how the team reacts. But they got a lot of work to do, a lot to prove. But especially on offense, man, I think you have to like what they're doing right now. I mean, Ben Johnson's back, the quarterback's back. They got, an equivalent, more or less, running back replacement for Jamal Williams, maybe even better. Who knows? They got a lot of pieces here. There should be no reason for them to be not to be an elite offense again. Defense is the big question mark. That's why we have Dave here. He's going to talk about the mock draft and has all the answers for who the Lions should draft, the blueprint. Brad Holmes calls Dave Birkett every night and says, Dave, what should I do? BFFs.
All right, Dave, just so I'm clear. So you don't buy this idea that somehow I hate to even call it an idea. That gives it too much credibility. This, wherever it comes from with Carlos, this idea that they're not showing that they're ready, that they're going to have to prove something somehow in a different way in the fall. I don't understand. But let me pick a couple of highlights here. And I don't want to start with this first sentence because I don't want to pile on. That wouldn't be fair. That would just be, over the top and egregious. I'll start with the second sentence here of a comment about this.
Oh, yeah, let's start with, I respect Goff and Decker. Let's forget that one.
Apparently, in his view, when it comes to winning in the NFL, and we all know who his is, what you say in April is much more important than what you actually do in the games during the regular season. Ridiculous. And then here's the next one, speaking about Goff not wanting to say anything. Hey, Carlos, I got news for you. They're not going to tell you what they said in bed to their wives or girlfriends either. That's just a sampling.
Is this your burner account that you're reading from?
That's just a sampling, Dave. There's a whole long list because, fortunately, my faith in humanity is restored a little bit when you see people that understand. Oh my, they're shaking their heads too. But do you buy this idea, Dave? I guess when it gets right down to it, that they're somehow what they're saying right now is showing that they're not going to be ready.
Well, you're the only person that's ever bought or had your faith in humanity restored by message board postings. So.
No, but they see what Carlos is trying to do, right?
No, I know. Well, so I will say this: I do think that there is a different pressure, maybe, that comes with being the hunted rather than being the hunter, and maybe that's what Carlos was trying to get at a little bit.
He might have been. It's hard to know.
What Jared Goff was trying to avoid acknowledging, but I think, there's a different set of expectations, like Carlos said, when however the Lions start the season, instead of saying, here we go again, get ready for the draft, whatever, or maybe there's some hope. They're going to say, okay, see, I told you, right? We have this team that's going to, contend for a Super Bowl, or no, the disappointment is going to take over, whatever it is. Like, however they react to that, it's going to be different. It's going to feel different than it has in recent years, because the Lions are the buzziest team, one of the buzziest teams in the NFL right now. And you look at the NFC and it appears wide open. And, the Lions finished on such a hot streak last year, and they've done enough with their roster and have enough coming back that you look at it and you say, this has a chance to be something pretty good here. And maybe for a couple of years, this has a chance to be pretty good. So I do think there's something to that maybe there's a different, pressure that comes with these expectations, and how do these players react to it? And that will be part of the story this year. But ultimately, again, what people say right now, downplaying that, embracing that, whatever, I just don't, it's April, so it doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot to me.
I think that, what they really, we have a job, right? Everybody, the media has a job. We get there. We want to ask about the season. It's the first time we've seen Goff since the end of the year, all this stuff. All they want to talk about is that they lifted and they did their body comp check and they're ready to, whatever. Yeah. I mean, I forget what one of them, Decker or someone said, I've barely seen anybody or whatever. I've seen a couple of guys in my room and, people are filtering in, whatever. And it's, air quotes, voluntary anyway. But, that's what they hope to talk about is, and they do get some questions about that, some, pretty mundane questions about, are you ready to, what was your off-season throwing program like? And how great was that? Whatever, and yeah, it's good to see the guys. And, but the questions really are, this is the first time we've seen you guys since you guys ended on a high note, sent Aaron Rodgers packing into oblivion, last game going out a loser in Lambeau, if that trade ever comes to fruition. A lot of hope that you ended the season with. And don't forget, we talked to also Lee McNeil, defensive tackle, and he didn't get any questions about how good can this team really be, because he plays on defense, and we just if they just hopefully finished less than in the 30s, it'll be a victory probably. But the guys on offense, I mean, this is an elite offense, and it's only going to get better. And I think that, to me, you got to believe Ben Johnson's motivated to prove everybody wrong. Who knows what happened with North Carolina, but he wants to light the world on fire on offense. He's got all the pieces. He's going to get more. It should be an exciting time. There's a lot of expectations, but it's all based on the offense. And when we talk to these three offensive players, especially the leaders and Goff and Decker, it was interesting that they didn't want to say that they were expecting a lot. They probably are. I mean, that, commenter, S. Windsor, 68 probably, probably, he's all right. They're not going to give the world everything.
I'm trying to remain calm here. Dave just said Decker didn't do that. And I'm sorry. I love you, Carlos, but I'm going to trust Dave's perception of the scrum over yours. I hate to say that, but it's true. Maybe Goff did. So that's fine. And in fairness, and Dave, I'll say this. Carlos is right that I think I don't think anybody would disagree with this. What happens in September is going to be big in terms of what the town, the sports fans around this town feel, right? If they come out and go 1-3 or whatever, yeah, people are going to go right back to where they've always been. And I absolutely agree with Carlos. But oh God, I was starting to get sidetracked with this Ben Johnson business again. Okay, Dave, let me ask you this. Why is Carlos so hell-bent on saying Ben Johnson's got a chip on his shoulder and he was somehow screwed over in this process last fall, as opposed to a young guy, never thought about a real chance before last season, going out and putting feelers out and going through the beginning of that process. What's going on here, Dave?
Well, I just want to say this about Decker. He did say yesterday that it's nice to come into the building with expectations, and it's enjoyable to look toward next year, knowing that the foundation is in place. But he said, you have to come in and do your thing, right? You got to take care of business for any of that to mean something. And so I think that's the bottom line with it all, right? Expectations are here. Doesn't mean anything now. Got to take care of it. As for Ben Johnson, he is, look, I guess no one knows exactly what happened in those interviews. My read from talking to people is that Ben probably could have had that Carolina job if he wanted it, had he gone through the process. But
you think they lowballed him? Did something? Told him we have to have certain guys on his staff or something dictated?
No, I think, to Ben Johnson's credit, he went through this and he realized, I don't know if it's I'm not quite ready, or I want a situation where I can win in, or whatever. There was something that just wasn't right about it for him at this time.
Money?
And no, look, David Tepper's like the second richest owner in the NFL. I can't imagine it was about money. And Ben has a really, really, really good reputation. He's going to be a head coach in the NFL as long as Jared Goff stays healthy and this Lions offense is pretty good this coming season. And I just, Ben Johnson wanted, my understanding, he wanted Vic Fangio as his defensive coordinator, but Vic Fangio had 8 or 10 offers last year. So who knows if Vic Fangio was going to go with Ben Johnson, And so maybe Ben didn't have the right staff in place, or maybe he didn't feel quite comfortable with going to that, that organization at this point in time, to feel that he could be a winner, that he could win in the NFL. And I think that's ultimately where he is right now as a young coordinator is, he should. You never know for sure, right? Things change, and a lot of coaches that thought they were going to get jobs never do. But he should have an opportunity to be in a position where he's coveted for multiple jobs again. And maybe he has his pick of jobs. Maybe he's more ready from the preparation that he's put in to know the roster, or have the right staff in place, or just whatever the situation is. Another year of experience, calling plays and doing the things that he needs to do to feel like he can win in the NFL. And so I think he, again, not knowing everything that went down, I think he pulled himself out of the running for the right reasons by saying, you know what, I'm going to have a better chance for me to succeed a year down the road at whatever that spot is than I do now. And so he made that decision for him and his family, and to come back and, be here with the Lions and get another bite at the apple at some point in the future.
I don't believe that this was the way it's been cast as, what was it? Unfinished business, whatever, no, horse pucky. Well, something wasn't right about that whole process. Either, the offer, the right. He wanted certain guys on his staff, and they're like, well, if, we don't, Fangio's 8,000 years old. No, we don't want him, if there was something that didn't sit right.
And I totally Vic Fangio. Fangio's a really good. Again, he had 8 or 10 offers.
It's not Carolina saying not that. It's Fangio saying no. Whatever. It's not.
Whatever
I don't
was,
get this.
The money, the control of the roster, whatever. I don't know if he wanted Matt Rule status or whatever it was. But also, this is the Panthers. They've been successful. They have a good owner. It's not Jerry Jones. It's not Dan Snyder. It's not weird stuff. There's nothing weird about that organization. They're supportive of their coaches. They've had success. So I think it was maybe an issue with, first time coach, and there were some, restrictions maybe placed on him or something, or who knows, maybe he didn't interview well. Who knows what it was?
I don't understand.
There was some reservation
Dave
from the organization probably, where, and Ben probably had some feeling about that, right? It's not perfect. It's not the perfect fit. And there was probably, he probably had a feeling
to his credit if he had that feeling.
I know it's to his credit. I'm just saying that it's not the Panthers were like, here's $1 billion, come be our coach. No thank you.
You're just ignoring Dave. That's what's happening. You're just ignoring Dave. We've got one of the best inside plugged in reporters in the business on our staff.
I love Dave, Shawn, but don't pretend you don't know how this business works. Dave talks to people, and people always have a self-serving point of view, and they want to protect certain people. And so, you don't always hear the full truth. You don't hear the ugliness of it.
That'd be fine if he just talked to one person, but he talks to multiple people. Not only that, it tracks a lot more with human nature. The idea, look, if you're not a narcissist, the idea that you're not ready for something, that you might be self-aware for that, is
there are 31 coaching opportunity, 32 coaching jobs on the planet, Shawn. If you don't think you're ready for it, don't even start. Get out of NFL. If you're a coordinator right now in the NFL, you don't think you can be a head coach, get out. Go be a garbage man. That's the whole point of being a coordinator.
Come on.
32 jobs on the planet.
Maybe, but you don't know what you don't know until you get into the interview process.
Exactly.
And again, I don't know everything that went on, but I feel pretty comfortable in saying that Ben Johnson was the favorite to get the Carolina job at the time that he pulled himself out of that. Now, would he have got it? I don't know. I mean, they hired a pretty good coach and an offensive coach and an experienced coach. So I don't know for sure that he would have gotten it, but he is very highly respected in the NFL. And there was a pretty good chance that he was going to be a finalist, the guy, whatever it is, in Carolina. And so I give him a lot of credit if going through that process, I don't know that he didn't interview well, but if what you're saying, Carlos, maybe he didn't interview well, maybe that's part of his realization that, you know what, I'm not quite ready for this right now at this very moment, because I've just been a coordinator for one season. I spilled so much of myself into that I don't know this roster like I should, or I don't have the right staff in place, or whatever the circumstances are that led him to make that decision to want to come back. I give him a lot of credit for being, as Shawn said, very self-aware to say, you know what, my best chance to succeed in the NFL, and I'm confident enough in myself that I'm going to get another chance, is going to be next year after I do some more really, really good things on the field with the Lions. And then I have an even better hand on what my staff is going to be. And I'm going to have my pick of jobs. And hey, maybe I will have a team that's going to pick first or second, because Carolina wasn't picking first or second at the time. And so I'm going to get that quarterback at USC or that quarterback at North Carolina that a lot of people in the league think is going to be a superstar. So I don't know all the factors that went into it, but I think Ben Johnson, from what I know, deserves credit for pulling his name out of the running, and whatever he, saying about unfinished business or not, realizing that I'm going to succeed as a head coach in the NFL by having one more year of experience and by making sure I have all my ducks lined up by the time I go to become a head coach.
Okay. Is it possible, Dave? Will you concede? Is it even possible that Carolina lowballed him, and that was the reason? They were like, hey, we can get Ben Johnson for a couple of $1 million bucks cheaper than Frank Reich, who's an established, head coach. Is that possible? That's why he pulled his name out of the hat. Is that possible at all?
I mean, like, anything's possible, right? So I guess I'm not going to say no, but who's your source on that? You know what I mean? Like, have you talked to somebody that suggested that? I don't think there's
watching the NFL and listening to humans for a long time. Yeah.
No,
oh my God.
I don't, just because somebody pulls their name out of the running or doesn't get a job or was considered a favorite and is then, doesn't, end up in that spot, that doesn't always come down to money. And Ben had like a virtual interview, and he was one of many people. And yes, in the NFL, I think you probably know some parameters of what you're going to get paid. But the Carolina Panthers weren't the only team interested in Ben Johnson. So I don't know that David Tepper was going to Ben Johnson and say, here, you're taking pennies on the dollar to be a head coach. And, when the going rate is twice that. Ben's got a really good agent, one of the more prominent coaching agents in the business. I tend to think that he had a pretty good handle on, and he wouldn't have let his client interview for some place that was going to be an issue where that may hold him back. And I don't think there's any reason to believe that David Tepper would be the lowball type. That's not who he is as an owner. So do I think that was a factor in this? I don't think it was at all. But is it a possibility? Sure. Anything can be possible.
Checkmate.
Yeah, a meteor could hit us right tomorrow. I mean, I guess in that sense. Okay, we need to take a break, and we want to talk about the mock draft and maybe a little bit of John Fox and the idea of bringing in an older coach, established coach, whatever. I think it's interesting. But real quickly though, Dave, I figured it out. I figured out where Tuesday's column came from. Carlos went in there and got tired of listening to the questions about off-season regiments and workouts and diets and whatever else, and thought, okay, this is boring vanilla. I'm going to find something that's also boring vanilla and say that, no, what this really means is this. And now I'm concerned. Okay, I'm glad that I finally figured out where that came from. Instead of just saying, well, Goff's saying this, and that's whatever, he can say this over here and then say this over there. But the truth is, they're going to have to deal with this in the fall. That's real. That's true. But to be concerned that they don't know that, okay, fine, whatever.
Well,
it's
what, Shawn? That's a really good point. I have to admit, and that you could write that column. Wait, you didn't go to the press conference. You couldn't do it. Sorry about that. Okay, next time,
yeah.
Talk.
Okay, no, Ben Johnson has got a chip on his shoulder because he got screwed over, and Jared Goff is clueless. Okay, let's take a break. And that's the world according to Carlos. Let's take a break, and we'll get back into that world, because I will say it is though sometimes frustrating, it is a fun place to be.
It's like Pee-wee's world.
Yeah, my oldest son refers to him as the anarchist, which I didn't realize until the other day. But
agent of chaos is
a chaos agent is what I've always said. Yes, right. He's the Draymond Green of the Detroit Free Press.
Don't step on me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a little bit more than a step, but yes. All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Okay, let's take the temperature down here. It's me, really. This is all my fault, as things usually are. And we want to get into the mock draft here, because I know Dave's fans are waiting for the 10th or 11th. How many, Carlos?
I think it's 12. I think
12. Okay, the
12.5.
But since I got you both here, and since you guys listen to him talk, I'm curious does it say anything or not? It may not. That Dan Campbell brought in John Fox, and just the idea that he wasn't worried about Aaron Glenn's sense of place, security, all that sort of thing. That the way he's building out his staff is, hey, the more ideas, the better. Let's get our egos out and see if we can throw everything in a pot and come up with the best way to attack week to week. I'm curious what you guys thought of the hire in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, look, somebody asked me in a radio interview a few days ago about, John Fox and how important that was for the Lions. And, honestly, I mean, I think it's a good hire, but I don't know that it's like hugely important, because it's still going to be Aaron Glenn's defense. And as Dan said, John is there to sort of, look at, cover Aaron's blind spots, and make sure that there's another sounding board for him to pick from. And yeah, certainly it's something that Dan has done, and that, he believes in, just like competition among players, essentially competition among staff, not for jobs necessarily, but that, when you raise the intelligence quotient of the room, it helps everyone. And so, they had this same spot filled in 2021, his first season, when Dom Capers was there. They didn't have that spot last year on defense. They did on offense with John Morton, who wasn't there in 2021. And now they have essentially, a senior assistant on both sides of the ball. So it's just the way the NFL has gone. Probably a good move. Fox has lots of experience, good defensive mind. Don't think it hurts at all, but I don't know that it's going to be the difference between the Lions, winning 11 games and winning 8 games.
I think it's going to be a sensitive point, because Ben Johnson's going to ask John Fox, why did they hire Frank Reich instead of me? When you were with the Colts, you were his best buddy. You should have done something for me. This is obviously tacit. A tacit concession from Dan Campbell that things aren't going great on defense with Aaron Glenn, and he needs help. He needs something, a backstop, like Dave said, maybe some, Dave, before he had a name drop, by the way, that he was on a radio show, Shawn, and he got asked this question.
No, don't turn your wrath on Dave. Take it out on me.
I hear it all the time. It's okay.
Take it out on me.
I was talking to my good friend Mike Valenti the other day, and it's okay. I'm used to it.
This was a show in Vegas. So.
Oh, Vegas. Oh my God. Oh, I'm so sorry.
There.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, sometimes there are too many voices in the room, right, Dave? It doesn't always work out. But hopefully, Dan Campbell knows John Fox, and I think they've had a relationship for a while, and he trusts him. So I don't think he'd bring somebody in who wouldn't work in that dynamic. But let's put it this way: it can't be worse, can it? So it's probably a good move. Someone to provide another point of view, another perspective. I mean, even Fox himself really didn't really exactly say what he was going to do, right? He was just kind of like, well, I'm going to be there, and whatever people need me to do, whatever, experience, whatever. He's seen a lot of football. I think he dropped a little hint that he may have set an NFL record for how many straight years he's been a head coach, 16 or whatever it was, without a break. Yeah, it's good. It's good to have that experience, probably. But it's all going to come down to who they draft and how they use them. They're making improvements. Yeah, I mean, it's there should be an improvement. Fox may be part of that. The hard thing about it is we're just never going to really know. I mean, we're not really going to probably talk to John Fox much, if at all, the rest of the season, because he's not a position coach and a coordinator. So it'll be a little bit hard to suss out how much the hand he's playing in figuring things out or helping things, unless Aaron Glenn or someone else gives him credit. But like I said, it can't get worse. Let's see if it helps a little bit at least.
Okay, let's get to the mock draft. So who do you have, Dave? Jalen Carter?
I have not done my mock for this weekend yet, so not to dodge the question or save it for the readers or anything. I just haven't got there with some of the content. Look, I mean, if I was as I think through the scenarios in my head, I don't think Jalen Carter will be the guy, just based on the culture fit. Though I don't know, exactly how that meeting went the other day. Certainly I think Tyree Wilson or Will Anderson, one of those guys would be a fit. Tyree Wilson's a guy that I've given to the Lions like 3 times in my 4 mock drafts, so it's not like that would not be anything new. Look, the way I see it, I guess, number 1, Bryce Young, right? Number 2 is sort of a pivot point in the draft with the Houston Texans. And, I don't know that they're going to take a quarterback. I sort of tweeted about this the other week that, there's definitely a lot of talk that they won't. So if let's say they trade with the Colts and there's only 2 quarterbacks that go in that top 4, that means a couple of those defensive guys are off the board, right? Maybe Will Anderson goes 3 and Tyree Wilson goes 4. And then the Lions have to pivot to a cornerback and they take, Devin Witherspoon from Illinois. If quarterbacks go high, right? If Houston takes a quarterback and then Indy takes a quarterback at 4, you're probably looking at Will Anderson at 3 and maybe Jalen Carter goes 5 or Anthony Richardson goes 5. So the Lions have more defensive players on the board. And that's where the Tyree Wilson scenario or even a Will Anderson falling comes in. So I think, just based purely on the number of quarterbacks that go in front of them, the Lions will either have their choice of Tyree Wilson, Will Anderson, Devin Witherspoon. Those seem like the most likely choices to me.
And they'd pass on Carter?
Yeah, I mean, again, look, Jalen Carter is, a lot of people, pundits, scouts will tell you he's the best player in the draft. But I just don't know about a culture fit from the Lions standpoint still. And we probably talked about this the last podcast. It seems to have more to do with his, practice habits, work habits, than it does like the accident that from a legal standpoint, has been cleared up. The racing charge, I shouldn't say the accident. He wasn't directly involved in the accident. So, but look, he is the guy that's what they need most as an interior pass rusher. And he's really, really good when he wants to be. So he would be a fit. And in some ways he would be the best fit. But culturally, I don't think he's the right fit, and that's why I think you're looking at Tyree Wilson, maybe another big defensive end paired with Aiden Hutchinson. So you've got 6'6" and 6'7" on the ends, and you got two really good bookend run defenders there, guys who can get after the pass rush, the passer, and you still have James Houston to rush the passer, and so that's sort of my. The scenario that I think is most ideal for the Lions. And just to maybe preempt the question that you have about the quarterbacks, the Lions obviously did some work on Justin Fields. They brought him in. That's a little bit of the wild card too, right? That Bryce Young is going number one. And if Houston doesn't love Justin Fields and they go defense and Arizona goes defense and Indy likes Anthony Richardson, there's certainly some talk that they could sort of go off the board like that, a Richardson or a Levis instead of a Fields. Then all of a sudden Fields is sitting there at 6 and, or could be sitting there at 6, I guess. Right. And so I think the Lions were wise to bring him in and do all their homework on him. Maybe that's the scenario where they take a quarterback, but I think, their preference is to go with one of those defensive players and continue building like they have, the last couple of years.
Before Carlos asked the question, I think it's interesting that Justin Fields, as a professional football player, is throwing his name back into the draft.
Did I say Justin Fields? Oh, wow.
I think that's
CJ Stroud.
That's
wow,
cool.
sorry.
No, that's cool. Yeah, he doesn't like Chicago anymore.
Yeah,
and so he's going to go back into the draft. I think that's awesome.
That's my fault.
Would it be great?
CJ Stroud was who
Wouldn't that be great?
You really haven't done your work on this mock draft yet, have you?
Ohio State quarterbacks.
I knew
nobody saw the draft pick. Nobody saw coming.
Yeah, I knew that's right. Would that be great, though? You go a couple of years, like, I don't like this. I'm going back into the draft.
Forget Chicago. Yeah, no, CJ Stroud was obviously who I meant there.
I knew who you meant. I knew.
Aren't they similar players, though? I mean, don't they feel somewhat similar?
No, Fields is a runner, man. You saw him in Chicago. That guy can, he's one of the most elusive quarterbacks in the game, a running back playing the position.
Wait, did Carlos just ask if they were similar players?
Yeah, Stroud is like...
Why can't Stroud run? I mean, he's not as good. I mean, I'm not saying he's Fields, but I mean...
No, that's the knock on him right now is that he didn't use his athleticism enough. I mean, Stroud is a very accurate passer, right? And he, if you watch some of those games, I mean, and granted, he had a great receiving core, but he threw some pretty balls and he really had that Ohio State offense humming. But that's what teams wonder, like, man, you have a little bit of this athleticism. Like, why don't you make some of these more off-schedule plays a little bit, And he didn't do that enough until that Georgia game. And so...
Because Ryan Day won't let him.
Nah, I don't think it's... I don't know. But, NFL people, that's not... I don't think that's the case. And he's not Justin Fields or ever going to be Justin Fields with his legs. Much more of a pocket passer, and he's really good at that. But, he's... And he's totally different than like an Anthony Richardson. And so if that's what you're looking for at that position, and maybe some team is, right, they want that dual threat. And, maybe that's why they would lean towards an Anthony Richardson over a CJ Stroud, as far off as Anthony Richardson seems to be from hitting his potential.
Let me ask you this.
Carlos, I have a question for you. I have a question for you real quickly. And Dave, you can chime in here. Sorry, Carlos. You know how if you have your kids, I don't know if your kids have phones. I know yours do, Carlos, but I don't know if your kids are quite old enough there yet, Dave. But as a parent, you can kind of control what they can see and do to some degree on the phone, even maybe on laptops. And I'm wondering if that's the solution that would all be happy. So if we could control Carlos's laptop so they can't ever write about the Lions again after the question about CJ Stroud and Justin Fields, if he starts to type in Lamar Jackson, it just shuts down on him. But if it's the Wings, that's awesome. If it's the Tigers, that's great. And whatever else in this life. But if it's football, then it just shuts down. And what do you think, Dave? Is that
Can we do that?
I think that would be awesome.
No, I'm not going to go for that because Carlos was actually out there in Allen Park.
Yes. Good point.
Okay, sorry, Carlos. Go ahead.
Yeah. Right, back to my question. So, do you think, in a crazy world, if Stroud and Richardson are still there and the Lions are picking 6th, do they pass on both of them?
That's good because I thought you were going to ask if Barry Sanders and Jerome Bettis were similar running backs. But no,
they're both good. They're both very good.
Hall of Famers. Yeah, look, I don't see the Lions taking a quarterback, but I don't know. Stroud is, look, in the NFL draft, right? I mean, you can go back to January, and I've told you guys before, I've always said this, right? Like, believe most what you hear in January, because that's when people are, they're not smoke screening as much, right? Now, this is when they do. If CJ Stroud if he was considered a top 4 player in the draft back then, right? Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, that was sort of seen as the top, tier of players. And if he falls to 6, then yeah, you have to consider that. And if you really liked what he said when he came in, if he handled all the X and O stuff on the whiteboard and you liked his personality, then you'd have to consider that. But I just don't, what Brad Holmes said back in January too was that it's a lot easier to get worse at quarterback than it is to get better. And I think, Brad would, and he'd probably agree with me when I say this, right? He's a snob when it comes to quarterbacks. He's a quarterback snob, and I'm a quarterback snob, and we just have different views on it in terms of, like, I'm a quarterback snob, so I think you need to, keep trying to find that Patrick Mahomes. And I think he's a quarterback snob where it comes to, like, well, I don't, I'm not going to get that. There's not Patrick Mahomes out there. So why am I going to try to upgrade when Patrick Mahomes isn't out there? And so, if he doesn't view whatever quarterbacks are there, Anthony Richardson, very far away from his potential, needs a lot of, play time to get there, not going to get it behind Goff, CJ Stroud, if whatever it may be, right? Maybe it's the lack of using some of those athletic skills or the inability to create things out of, pocket. He wouldn't be much different than Jared Goff in that way, that maybe, he sees them as the same. So why take the same guy at quarterback? So I think Brad Holmes would only draft a quarterback if he thinks that quarterback has a likelihood of reaching his star potential. And I don't know if he views either of those quarterbacks in that light. Anthony Richardson has star potential, but there's probably not a great likelihood that he reaches it given how raw he is, especially if he has to sit a year because he hasn't played a lot. And, I guess it's in the eye of the beholder whether CJ Stroud has star potential.
Now, is there 2 questions? And sorry, Shawn. One, the Jalen Carter thing, I don't know if you can answer this quickly, but you said he's not a culture fit. Is it just the legal stuff, or is it the whole Dan Campbell, you got to love football and be a grinder and grit, blah, blah, blah? Is that we're talking about culture, or is it the legal stuff that maybe he's... No,
as I said, it's more about, I think it's more about just practice habits and, the effort that you bring to the field on 100% of the plays that you're in practice or games. And, so that's really, look, last year, Brad Holmes, my understanding was that Brad liked Kayvon Thibodeau, he thought he was a really good player, and he is a good talent, and Dan was much more on the Aiden Hutchinson train. And it didn't mean Brad doesn't like Aiden. He did. But Thibodeau wasn't quite Dan Campbell's type of guy. And so they weren't going to draft Thibodeau. If it wasn't Aiden Hutchinson, if Aiden went 1, it was probably going to be Walker, who went to Jacksonville. And so I think it's sort of the same thing here when it comes to these defensive linemen, that I don't know that Jalen Carter is Dan's type of guy. And so when I look at players that are, and if Dan is going to be 100% on board with that pick, then, it's a Tyree Wilson who they got to look at his frame and be like, wow, we can coach this guy up and he plays hard. And, even if he's not quite as polished, we can do some things with him. Or it's a Will Anderson who checks every single box that you want off the field. Or maybe it's a Devin Witherspoon who doesn't play the same position, obviously, but has some of those same, love of football, tenacity sort of characteristics that have propelled him to, be a pretty great story after barely playing football in high school. So, so I think I just see other players as being a better fit for this team than Jalen Carter. But again, maybe they heard what they needed to hear from Jalen when he came on his visit.
Real quick thought, Carlos, for your second question on Carter. To me, the risk with guys like that, and I hate to say just if you don't think it's a culture fit or whatever, but if you bring a player in, they don't have the practice habits, and they're super talented, and they're not going to bring it all the time, that has an exponentially negative effect to me, right? So it's not just you're not getting the play you want out of one spot on the defensive tackle or one spot on the defensive line. That kind of lack of effort and waste of talent filters out, and it can submarine more than just that one spot. That's my experience, just in sports in general, but in football in particular, right? So that's the risk. To me, that'd be the culture risk.
And let me add this. And I wrote this, I don't know, a month and a half ago or something when I wrote about Jalen Carter. But this is not just like a unique to Dan Campbell thing, right? Like Martin Mayhew, I feel comfortable in saying would probably tell you, like, everyone bags on him for passing on Aaron Donald, and he'd admit that was a mistake, but he would tell you that his biggest mistake was drafting Nick Fairley, and it was for exactly that reason, right? Like Nick Fairley, very talented player, felt it in 13 when they didn't expect it to happen, and likable guy, people loved him in the locker room, but he just he was the same type that he could be great when he wanted to, and he just didn't want to enough.
But don't forget, they had Shawn Rogers shortly before that. And Shawn Rogers was a hell of a player. Same thing, same profile. Lazy, didn't have great work habits, all that stuff. But he was a Pro Bowler. He was a really great player.
Super talented, wasn't he?
Yeah, he could have been more. And that's always the NFL, right? It's all, your potential, your ceiling, your potential. This guy can be a Hall of Famer. He can blah, blah, blah. That's not in everybody. But you can still get a damn good player.
Well, and it's easy to overlook the character flaws, as the Lions say, when you love football, right? And when things go wrong, or you pour yourself into the game, and that, that's your strength, and that, comes out of you, and you play your best. But when you don't have that love of football, and you're gonna half-ass it at practice, or however that shows up, then that's when I think it gets to be a concern. And so that's why some of these questions are out there about Jalen Carter, and hopefully he answers them all well, and he goes on to a great career because he's a super talented player. Maybe some of this stuff is overblown, but I think that's what the Lions and every team are trying to figure out. It has more to do with that than it does anything off the field.
So go ahead, Carl. Sorry.
Is it when I asked about the Stroud and Anthony Richardson thing, is that Brad Holmes' nightmare, Dave, that both those dudes are available and he's picking sixth, and he would have to pick a guy that high, and suddenly everything that you said about Jared Goff is our guy and he's the man and we believe in him and blah, blah, blah goes out the window because everybody's going to be calling for that draft pick to play ASAP. There's going to be a quarterback controversy, all that stuff.
Well, that's assuming he takes him, and I don't know that he would. I mean, the Lions,
that's what I'm saying.
They did their homework on Stroud and brought him in. They didn't bring Anthony Richardson in for a visit. They didn't go to his pro day, so I don't know. I don't know how they value him, or where they would consider him in the draft. I mean, he passed on Justin Fields, to go back to that name, in the draft a couple years ago, right? And at that point in time, and still today, I mean, he made the right choice, made a great pick in Penei Sewell. But if Justin Fields becomes a star, that's obviously going to be like hanging over the Lions' head for years, that, hey, you passed on this guy who went in your own division, who is now a star. And so, Brad appears comfortable enough that it doesn't matter if a CJ Stroud or an Anthony Richardson or whoever becomes a star. If he passes on them at 6, he likes his guys that he likes, and he's going to do that. So I don't know that he would feel compelled to take either of those guys at 6. Just reading the tea leaves, I would guess that, CJ Stroud more than Anthony Richardson is in the mix for them at 6 if they're both there. But, maybe that's a question to ask Brad tomorrow, is, exactly some of his thoughts on these quarterbacks in this quarterback class.
Well, I'm not going to ask that because someone wrote that he doesn't have any kind of a depth chart anywhere on their draft board. I don't know if he'd even admit he has a draft board. And how many times he's going to say in the press conference they're going to get the best player available. Best player for the Lions.
Yeah, best player for the Lions. Yeah, 8.5 is what Vegas has it at right now. 8.5 is the over.
8.5. Ooh.
All right. Before we let you go, Dave, and thank you for previewing a little bit of the mock draft coming up. We love your mock drafts. But before we let you go, you hung me out to dry a few weeks ago, man. Carlos wrote.
I did.
You did. Carlos wrote a column about how the free agency's kind of class of the Lions is underwhelming, and they really needed to go get Lamar Jackson. But he said at the end of the column,
oh, God.
Yeah, I know exactly. Although he said at the end of the column that they maybe didn't need to go to Lamar Jackson, so I wasn't sure.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah, I did leave you out to dry.
of course you did, man. So what do you think about? I see that he might be getting paid $200 million, not Jalen Hurts money, but what do you think about his fit?
I think that's about the silliest thing Carlos has written since trading Matthew Stafford for Tom Brady. I'm going to be real honest. Lamar Jackson for the Lions. Look, Lamar Jackson, I think he's a good quarterback. He's very unique. He's an MVP, right? He's still young. I mean, who knows, what, if anything, he's going to go on to win in his NFL career. I know there are people in the NFL that have their doubts about that, but I mean, that doesn't take into account the money or the compensation that you would have to give that man to come to Detroit. And when you're the Lions and you have, all these first round picks, all this draft capital, it's limited cap space. I know they have 20 couple million right now, but they need 20 of that to sign their draft picks and, to get them through the season, practice squad, all that good stuff. It's not like they're, the Bears with $80 million in cap space when they go into free agency. I just don't think it takes any of that into account. And it would also involve a complete overhaul of the offense and the complete overhaul of everything that they're doing. So, it's pie in the sky-ish to say, yeah, let's go add this MVP quarterback who everyone acknowledges is a really good talent. But the reality of it is that just it wouldn't work like that. You can't flip a switch and put him in and automatically jump from 9 wins to 13 wins because you added a quarterback like Lamar Jackson. There's a lot more that goes into it than that.
I just wanted to have some fun with Lamar Jackson. But in all seriousness, what did you think of the free agency signing class?
Yeah, I mean, look, free agency is, fool's gold. Never get too, enthralled with who they sign or who they don't. I think they added some starters. That's a good thing. Ultimately, the most important thing, they didn't sign anyone to bad deals. Most of those guys got 1-year deals, so it's not going to be an anchor on them. The Lions are building this thing the right way through the draft. I do think Cam Sutton's a pretty good player. He's not going to be Jalen Ramsey at his peak. So it's not like you're getting a bona fide number one, all-pro cornerback, but you made an upgrade with him and you made an upgrade with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, no doubt, wherever he plays at slot corner or safety. And if Emmanuel Mosley is healthy, you should have 3 new starters in the secondary. Bring back a healthy Tracy Walker. Maybe Kirby Joseph improves in year 2. And all of a sudden, you look like the Lions have, or the Lions should have, an improved secondary.
Carlos?
Yeah, so there's a lot of ifs there. I think kind of 12 of them. So yeah, that should be great. I in free agency, that's the problem, right? Is the 1-year deals and all that stuff. It means that there's not a lot of faith on either side. Everybody, they're building to the draft. It's the right thing. Well, you got to also add you got to hit on some really good free agents. You got to find some Glover Quinns, right? Some Dre Bly's out there. That's the thing that they're missing right now. Cam Sutton might be that guy. Who knows?
CJ Gardner-Johnson. He was the one that came to him late, Carlos, right? Like all of a sudden, they planned to sign these 2 corners, and then it was like, we got a little bit of money left over, and this guy's still out there. So, wow, this could be like our bonus edition. That was the one I think that sort of opened people's eyes. That was like, well, the Lions, we knew they were going to add a cornerback, and okay, they added this. They took an injury flyer on Mosley too. But, oh, man, that you sign this third guy, and all of a sudden it has more a feel like, well, we're making a run for it this year because we added this guy that we didn't think was going to be there. So I think he's the one that, has that familiarity, can play a couple different spots, lots of production on a really good team last year. He's the one to me that, all of a sudden it went from just filling needs to, well, we're going to roll the dice on someone who maybe can help us make a run here in 2023.
Why was he out there? Was he looking for a huge deal and wasn't getting it? So he's just settling for a 1-year deal? Is that?
Yeah, that was the report out of Philadelphia. Jeff McClain had reported, that he sort of overplayed his hand, that, the Eagles had offered him a contract early on. His agent kind of went and shopped it around and thought he'd get more. And by the time he realized he wasn't, the Eagles had already pivoted to, keeping Darius Slay and re-signing, Fletcher Cox, I think it was. And so, restructuring Brandon Graham's deal. So they had allocated their money towards other players that they were going to keep around and no longer had, the space to bring him back. And I know you can do whatever with cap room, and so maybe they could have made it happen, but that's why he was out there. And I think, from his perspective, it was, well, give me 1 year and a defense that I know, and, a spot that I know I'm going to be playing, a really prominent role, and I'm going to have another really good season. And then I want to be able to cash in again in 2024, get the deal that I really thought I should have got this year.
I think the one guy that is going to make a big difference if he stays healthy is Tracy Walker. I think he played like 2 or 3 games last year or so. He was the anchor back there in the secondary. So that's going to be huge. It's your own guy, but if he's going to be healthy, really good player.
When did they lose him? Was that at Minnesota?
Yeah. Week 3, right? Week 4, week 3.
And didn't that loss sort of, couldn't you see it almost immediately? They kept the Vikings in relative check before he went down, or am I misremembering that?
That was, the Lions had a shot to win that game, late. That was obviously the one that they.
No, I remember that, but I thought they played okay defense relative to what they had been playing, and then Walker went out, and then Cousins, they started moving the ball better. Maybe I'm misremembering that, but.
It was so early, I just remember going back and watching it, and it was like he was backpedaling, and then he planted and drove to come forward, and I think it was early in the game, so I don't know what it had, but what it did, Shawn, was, if you remember, right when he was out, I think Juju Hughes maybe came in, who was then cut a couple weeks later, and Kirby Joseph took over as a starter, the next week. And, then they benched Deshaun Elliott, and Savion Smith came in and started like the next game or against New England. And so it really started, that dynamic where they were playing with personnel in the backfield, trying to find the right fit. And so, as bad as the Lions defense was last season, that was a little part of it, was that they were, juggling personnel, trying to make up for some of their shortcomings in the back end.
Oh, for sure. All right, let's. Carlos, do you have any more football questions?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. I just didn't know if you wanted to compare some more players, and that's.
No, we'll have Dave on next week again,
and we'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Can we just go right into the favorite thing real quick? Who wants to start?
Who goes first?
Carlos.
Carlos always goes first because it's his segment. It's his segment. It's his show.
It's me, Dave, and then Shawn can pick which one he steals it from. So
okay.
Mine is simple. It's a beautiful day in Detroit. We go from summer to winter to summer, I guess, every other day now. So it's the start of our Free Press softball, co-ed softball team on Belle Isle. Both of you guys have come out and have supported our coworkers, consistently, vociferously. We appreciate it. Anytime you guys want to come out on a Wednesday, Belle Isle Athletic Complex, Free Stars. And I'm proud to announce that this year we have a new coaching hire. The guy who's going to lead us to a championship, who's going to change the culture, who's going to make every right decision and every right move. You know who he is. It's Carlos Menard. So it's going to be a great season, folks. I am inspired. I'm inspired by Dave's son, who's a baseball beast. Hearing about Jack Birkett always brightens my day and how much he loves the sport. So I'm going to carry his spirit with me out there on the softball diamond. And if we don't go 0-12, it'll be a miracle. But still, we're going to have fun doing it. So come on out, guys. Anytime.
My son does love himself some baseball.
What's yours, Dave?
Man, I was trying to think of something good here as Carlos was talking, and I don't know, maybe I'm losing brain cells, but I couldn't really come up with anything.
You didn't have anything you enjoyed this past week?
No, I was just going to say, look, since Carlos brought up, softball, look, let's give the Tigers some credit. They're losing as we're recording this, but 5 straight wins and a couple in walk-off fashion. It's not going to be a very good summer here in Detroit for baseball, but maybe there's an opportunity to at least get some excitement out of it right now. And hey, we've been dreaming on what this city would be like for a long time if all these teams got good. I think the Lions are starting to get there. Tigers still have a long way to go, but at least they're doing some good things on the baseball diamond. For right
I think it was 3 straight walk-off wins, right?
3 straight walk-offs. Yeah,
I think it was.
That's right.
What's so that this is Wednesday? They're playing. What's the score as we?
Well, I happened to check my fantasy team, and I think they were down 3-0. So, and I would not make my fantasy team the great thing of the week because my team we've hit a little slump here of late. So
I mean, I don't have enough Dodgers
right now. That's probably true.
I want to say my favorite thing is that Carlos and I finally figured this out. I'm going to I'll just write basketball and some football, and Carlos will write baseball and hockey and golf. And if I could add a little tennis in there for me, then I think we'd be perfect. That'd be a great rundown.
It'd be the trade-off.
Yeah, what do you think?
To the good working relationship. I as much as I would like it, Shawn, I would miss having Carlos out in Allen Park every now and then. So I have a little gift that I have to give him still. So I'll give him that Thursday if I remember it. I forgot it the last couple of times that he's been out there. So. Yeah, I'd still miss him. He's such a good punching bag. I like to have him around out there sometimes.
Well, Carlos is just fun. He's a fun, good dude. It's like. I
want to know if Dave's taking. Is Dave taking Jack Birkett to watch the Angels when they came to Comerica Park in July to watch Phil Nevin manage the Halos?
Carlos, he's sort of off the Angels tip right now. He's a huge Padres fan. We went and saw a Padres game in spring training. Family was down there for a couple days in Arizona when I was down there. So went down there, and this is how big a Padres fan he is. Not that anyone cares about my fantasy team, but we have minor leaguers in our fantasy league, and he's such a big Padres fan. And he loves catching that the Padres have this very young catcher who's a really good prospect. Ethan Salas was like the top international signing. And my son was like, we have to sign Ethan Salas for our team because I want him on my team. He's going to take over the team at some point when he's capable, and I can finally get rid of that thing. And so he wants Ethan Salas on his team.
Well, my real favorite thing, though, is if I could say this real quickly, is Carlos was right, and he taught me an important lesson. He is not, you mentioned the Tigers, Dave. He is not at any point, unless I missed it, jumped on this terrible start that they had, right? They had this awful start, and people are thinking, oh my God, it's going to be a long spring and in summer. And maybe it will be, and maybe it still will be. But he waited, and he did, he did that all winter too with the hockey, but he waited. And I, on the other hand, wrote some silly thing the other day where I thought, okay, well, yeah, maybe they will start winning and they'll shock us all. But now that the bullpen and the starting rotation, and all these reasons. Yeah. And of course I look like a total fool, which is frequent. But Carlos's sage patience is the way to do it. And once again, he proved that. And that's my favorite thing.
Oh, that's my favorite thing too. Sage patience. I love it.
Yeah. Because it's 162 games, and Carl's favorite sport is baseball, right? Is that fair to say? Or hockey, or is it hockey?
So you have to judge your favorite sport by what makes you the most upset when you watch it, right? And probably I get more upset
Kings or Dodgers?
About the Kings. And the Kings, by the way, beating your Connor McDavid Oilers in the first game in Edmonton.
Wait, aren't Connor McDavid and Dylan Larkin the same player? Similar players?
Yeah, they're both white guy hockey players, so same guy. Yeah. So I get more upset about the Kings, and I have more animosity toward their opponents than the Dodgers probably. So
what sport do you love more? You play baseball, right? What sport do you love more? What's like more? Do you get more just thrilling? If I know playoff hockey is really thrilling, but what sport do you love more?
Let's go with David.
I'll probably watch more baseball throughout the season. But I love playoff baseball. I love playoff baseball. I love playoff hockey. I'm punching walls and things and stuff, whatever. But playoff baseball, I really look forward to. Although we're recording this on Wednesday, I'm really looking forward to Game 2 in Edmonton with the Kings tonight to go up 2-0 and go back to Staples or what are they, Crypto Arena, whatever, and close it out in 4. So that how many people? I think as many people had the Oilers winning the Stanley Cup this year as the baseball smarty pants nerd boys have the Padres winning the division. Every year they want to pick the Padres to win the NL West, and every year for 30 years they've been waiting. So
he's always you're always cracking on the math guys.
but it's I don't like the hot picks. Everybody loves like the trendy picks and the Padres because Fernando Tatis flips his bat, so of course they're going to win the NL West. No, it's not going to happen. It's
wow.
It's the city of tears in San Diego. So,
Jack is going to be so mad at you now, Carlos. For
hey, tell him
he's going to rip up his Cal State Fullerton shirt.
Tell Jack I will buy him the Padres hat of his choice when
he's got a couple of those,
Padres or whatever he wants from the Padres. Any Padres merch that's not like a signed Fernando Tatis jersey or whatever. I will buy that for him when they win the NL West, which means he's going to be in his 50s and I'll probably be dead. But still.
When did you start hating the Padres? When Steve Garvey started playing for him, and you're like, traitor! I can't believe this. Is that?
No, I was mad at the Dodgers. But I wanted. Listen, here's the thing with the Padres. The dirty little secret is Dodgers fans want them to be good. Actually, we don't want them to be bad. Dodgers fans hate the Giants, but you need a worthy opponent, right? You wrote your excellent basketball column about Draymond Green and the bad guy, and you need a villain. You need somebody to push back against. And the Padres have just been this weakling team for a long time that have been non-competitive.
There it is. For those
showing us, what are you showing us?
So I had to run while you guys were talking and get my son has a Padres spinner chain, like the one they used to give out after home runs.
That is awesome.
We're filming this on StreamYard, so I just had to go and show it to you guys as we're talking.
I had one last thought here, and I mean this really sincerely, and I'm just sort of figuring this out, and maybe I'm completely off base here, but what's interesting, Dave, and you too, Carlos. So you love hockey and baseball. I mean, you love them, both of them. And you can quibble about which one you love more, whatever. You get more angry during the hockey plays than the baseball plays. That's fun. What's interesting is that of all the sports you write about as a columnist, and I don't want to get too far inside baseball here, no pun intended, but those are the most patient columns you write. And I wonder how much that has to do with you loving those sports the most, therefore knowing and feeling and understanding those sports the most. It's the same with me. I'm a lot more patient in football and basketball columns than I am. And I realized this the other day when I wrote about the Tigers hockey columns, or baseball and hockey columns. It's sort of the opposite for me, where you don't quite have that same feel. And so you're removed from it a little bit and you're like, oh, well, this should be happening. Why isn't this happening? As opposed to the sports because you can't love every sport you have to write about as a columnist the same, right? Or know it the same. You're just not. It's not possible.
I think with the Lions,
I was just curious what you think about that, because it's interesting.
I thought about this a lot over the years, and love is a strong word, but I really like covering the Lions. They are a lot of fun to cover because they've been traditionally so dysfunctional.
You're telling on yourself.
Well, it's a columnist's dream. I mean, if the team just wins all the time, it's kind of boring. If they lose all the time, it's boring too. But I mean, I think remember last year when they were winning, when they were that 8-2 streak, we were kind of like, we're writing the same thing. They're just good and they're good and they're good. And like, it was weird because we weren't used to it. But it's a fun team to cover. And I've said this forever. They've got one of the greatest fan bases in American sports. They support them way more than they should, that they deserve it. But I really enjoy it. I like the people down there. I like the PR staff. I like Sheila and Steve, Hamp. He's your coach. You love Dan Campbell. I really like Dan Campbell. I don't love him. You love him.
I think
he's your BFF.
I just think
he's one of your favorite coaches ever after Izzo, probably.
I think he's interesting and he doesn't big time people. And I like that when people do that, I mean,
he's a nice guy. He's fascinating, good for business. So I really enjoy.
And he pokes at himself, right? A little bit.
He does. And he has fun with the media too. And he's a fun dude. It's a fun team to cover, actually. When I went to Boston to do a Dave Birkett name drop when I was covering the Patriots in Foxborough in October or whatever, like it was such a business-like atmosphere there, and Belichick sets that atmosphere. It was like, and they win a lot. It's kind of like, this might be a little bit boring to cover if you cover like a really good team all the time. And we got a little better with the Red Wings. We got a lot of that with the Red Wings, but hockey guys are much different than football players. So they were always kind of fun to cover. They had different personalities, Brett Hull and these kind of guys. But I really like. I mean, Dave, do you enjoy covering the Lions? Is it something that you find engaging, interesting?
Do I enjoy work?
That's the question. Oh no!
If you got to work,
he's getting existential. That's a good question.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've said before, right? I think, look, covering the NFL to me is the best, beat to cover, right? It's just it's the monster. It's the thing people care most about. It's
true.
Also the one that lets you lead the most, normal, I guess,
That's
sort
true
of
too.
life.
Unless they get good, and all of a sudden we're going to be down there Sunday night and Monday night, right?
Yeah, but at least like during the week, you sort of, I mean, regardless, you don't have a midweek Tuesday game popping up where you got to go cover a Pistons game and
doubleheader in the rain,
Oklahoma City. Yeah,
exactly.
So it's.
No offense to Oklahoma City.
I like it from a life, work balance standpoint as much as you can in this business. And I will say, the people have been, certainly you have your interesting, players that you get to cover. There's so many of them in the locker room, right? 53 that you're bound to, run into some good stories just by talking to people. And the regime that they have in place now, I've said this before, I think it's good people, smart people in good places doing the right jobs, and they've been good to deal with, and that always isn't the case with some of the people that you cover. So you mentioned it, the PR staff to the the people upstairs and the front office and So I've got no complaints about covering the Lions right now.
Well, that sounds like a great favorite thing, and also it sounds like a great place to kind of wrap this up.
Not a favorite thing. We can't have that in here. Beat writers, right? We don't want that.
No, I'm not saying a favorite thing that you love the Lions or whatever. I'm saying just that you appreciate work-life balance, and it's enjoyable to cover people that seem to be, have some idea what they're doing, right?
Carlos gives me a lot of crap for some of these favorite things because I do talk about, the basketball team or what my kids are doing or whatever. But that's really what it comes down to for me is being able to have some work-life balance, because you guys know how it is in this profession where it is a lot of nights or weekends or, holidays, right, that you're away from, your family. And so I certainly do appreciate our bosses that have, allowed me to prioritize some of that stuff. The beat that sort of gives you that, that option of doing that. And even Carlos, Shawn, I know you said maybe you'll just come down there. We'll keep Carlos on, baseball and hockey. But even Carlos for being there at times when I'm like, man, I got something to do for my kids or whatever, and having him around to do some of those things. So that would be my favorite thing.
No, that's a great one. It's funny you say that because even this past weekend, I'm trying to remember. I wrote Saturday. I don't remember what it was, but my youngest son, I'm sure it was terrible. My youngest son came over because the NBA playoffs started, and that's his favorite time of the year, his favorite thing to watch. It is mine too. And he came over because he wanted to watch, but I had to write. And I'm fortunate. Look, I have some pretty good balance too, but sometimes you don't, right? The deadline's the deadline, and you got to fill print and space and all that. But for the most part, it's fun when you have those moments. That probably should have been my favorite thing, by the way, is the NBA playoffs started, and he's a basketball nut like I am, and he came over, and we get to watch the end of the Warriors dynasty and fall apart. People stomping on chests and it reminded me. I wrote this, I guess, but it reminded me a lot of when the Pistons finally got swept by the Bulls, and they were just defiant and I don't want to swear here, but you remember that, right? It was
Shawn. The more you talk about these things, the more favorite things are coming to my mind. Because my son, Sunday we're watching. He's like, "Hey, can we watch some basketball?" I'm like, "Yeah." Flip on the basketball game. Whatever basketball game was on, I think it was the Lakers at the time. It's raining outside. He opens up the garage door. He goes out and he's like, "Hey, can you come rebound for me while I'm shooting?" I'm like, it's raining outside.
I used to do that.
That's part of it. Yeah,
absolutely. I was out there. I had an ice chipper. I was out there scraping ice off, and so I could cut the fingers off the tip of my glove, so I could shoot in the winter. And
Those are the favorite things.
Absolutely.
That work-life
What you're
balance
saying
and
is
being
you're
able
too
do some
cheap
of
to
those
buy an
things.
automatic rebounder for Jack. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, because
That's a different kind of life.
Yeah, well,
right.
You know who I work for.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So
That's a. I mean, maybe you do, Carlos. You're out, and you live in a different stratosphere, maybe.
Well, I don't make
Carlos has a
money.
different zip code than us.
Yeah.
So, no.
All right. Okay, this has been great. It's been fun. Thanks for joining us, Carlos. Any nice, kind parting words for our bud here?
Yeah, just I'll see you out tonight, Wednesday at Belle Isle, guys. Thanks for coming out for the support.
I will definitely get there before the season's over. It's really cool that you're coaching. I think that's going to be fun. I want to come watch you coach, of course. And then
move a game out west, and I'll play.
And then I'll probably write about it.
I'm going to be the Matt Patricia of our softball league. All right, I promise.
Okay, and then maybe I can even come write a column about it. That would be great. But anyway, thanks again, Dave. Thank you, Carlos. It's always fun. Thanks for being a good sport, and keep up the great work, both of you. We want to thank you, the listener. Who else do we need to thank? We got some other people that I think have something to do with this.
Oh yeah, let's thank Kirkland
or at least
Crawford.
They say they do.
Kirkland Crawford, our sports editor and executive producer, and Anjanette Delgado, who's getting fewer and fewer mentions every week. Unfortunately, that's why our paychecks are going to go down. Dave's is going to go up as usual. Interim editor and executive producer. Oh, and Robin Chan, the most important person, actually.
Yeah, we got to start with Robin.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
That's okay, man. No, you were too worried about the conspiracies with Dave and more money and all this. So,
but mostly our listener. But where do they find the show, Shawn?
Wherever you find your favorite podcasts, Apple, Spotify. Once you get there, give us a rating, subscribe, and just download that so you can hear people like Dave Birkett, the great Dave Birkett. In any case, again, thanks for listening. We will be back next week with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn.